So you might have noticed that indie game development is a little bit chaotic these days. The most spicy story recently was Annapurna Interactive. They're an indie publisher and every single employee resigned. It was crazy. Today we have a similar-ish story, but it's a name that more people will know. It's Humble, as in Humble Bundle, Humble Store, Humble Games being their publisher. And they did publish successful games. I mean, take Slay the Spire. That was an absolute phenomenon. They published that. They published Unpacking, another hit. It's got 27k in Steam and had a Game Pass deal that I believe did real well. Forager also was a hit in Game Pass, also 31k in Steam, and many other games. And I can definitely say that when you look through every release, yes, not everything seems to have achieved humongous sales, but their hit rate in terms of quality, well, it was good. What nobody seems to have expected, though, was the whole team being laid off. Yes, everybody. Developers were also left in the lurch. They just woke up one day and found the whole publishing team was gone. But what's more interesting is what corporate owners Ziff Davis went on to do. It's even more strange, and it's even more revealing. 2 weeks after publishing Bo, Path of the Teal Lotus, the entire 36-person Humble Games team were laid off. We found out about this because of the employees' LinkedIn posts, and it quickly became apparent that nobody was expecting this, and that means it was not planned for whatsoever. Half a dozen development teams were left in the lurch. That's development teams who have signed a game with them, who have probably been working in that game for months or years, have its release in the future, and suddenly had no idea what would happen. Of course, for some of them, they were just about to release, which would be even more chaotic. Here we see one of the Unsighted developers posting that she just has no idea what's going to happen to their game's Steam page. And the thing is, when you're published, well, you don't get paid by Valve. Gabe does not send you a check. What happens is your publisher gets that check, and then, based on your publishing agreement, you receive royalties. Of course, that's if you're due any royalties. Humble responded to this pretty quickly. They, of course, in their statement, talked about their deep empathy. Their empathy for those who were impacted. About the hard economic times. All of the usual stuff, and they said that this was restructuring, which, in a way, was all a little suspicious to people. What then happened is Aftermath received and verified a copy of the call that took place internally, announcing all of this stuff. Here's what we learned from that leaked call. First up, the parent company actually tried to sell Humble Games twice. Second, they say they dealt with long delays and rising production costs. And third, that a third-party consultancy agency, the Powell Group, would take over management and release of future titles. Now that technically is restructuring, but it sure does look like closure and wrapping up commitments, especially when we know that they tried to sell the whole operation. But the thing is, you may think this is cut and dry. The reality is, it is not cut and dry. And where this story gets far more interesting is when we understand Ziff Davis. Today they make all the difference. You've probably never heard of their name, but the chances are that every single day you consume games media, you browse the internet, you come across something that Ziff Davis owns. And after digging into them, certainly today's sponsor did the job. Who are Fume, and their mission is to help you substitute bad habits with better ones. Now here's an actual Fume. It's a flavored air device, and importantly, it's not a vape. There's no heat, no batteries, just the flavor core. And you draw the flavored air into your mouth, right? And the overall experience is fantastic. The Fume itself is very weighty. It's very fidgety in loads of different ways, makes nice noises. And the way it clicked with me is basically that sometimes our bad habits, which for me, as an example, is just grazing and food, they're out of sensory boredom and a touch of anxiety. It's like a self-soothing thing. Maybe you want a texture in your mouth, a taste. For some people, it's just the habit of stepping outside for a break. And then, of course, the oral fixation, which is big for many people. That's where Fume really fits the bill because you've got these chewable toppers, which again shows they actually understand the needs of their audience and know how to help them get off their bad habit. For a limited time, you'll actually get a topper for free included at tryfume.com with code BellularNews. Then, of course, there's the flavors. I especially love the maple pepper and black licorice. They're just lovely and floral. They're more tea-like than the sickeningly sweet vape rips that we've all walked through. It's a more enjoyable experience. And between the lovely, ratcheting, clicking noise, the build quality, and the magnetic desk stand, it's just a high-quality experience. It's really cool, and you can go to tryfume.com/BellularNews or just scan the QR code. And when you're there, code BellularNews gets you a free Fume topper whenever you order a Journey pack. So, enjoy, hope it helps you out, and let's get into the video. Ziff Davis is in fact not a person. It's a publicly traded media company found by Mr. Ziff and Mr. Davis in 1927. Now, today they've got 4,700 employees. Last quarter, they brought in $320.8 million. Good for them. And if you've not heard of them but you play games, well, here's why you actually do see a lot of their content. News Corp used to own IGN. They sold IGN Entertainment to Ziff Davis in 2013. You then might remember that Humble Bundle sold to IGN Entertainment in 2017. And on top of all that, the Ziff Davis gaming empire recently expanded, because just a few months ago, they acquired Gamer Network, which means Eurogamer, Rock Paper Shotgun, VG247, Digital Foundry, and, of course, lest we not forget, Jelly Deals. And of course, as with all acquisitions, this meant that sites were merged, jobs were cut, and there were closures, like with Dicebreaker. So, Ziff Davis then, to understand them, they're a publishing conglomerate. They basically exist to make money via advertising, and they've got no interest in gaming, only the numbers. They exist to harvest up digital assets. As an example, if you've ever tested your internet using speedtest.net, they own that. If you ever decided to go and ask the men over at Ask Men, well, that's also them. And they also have blackfriday.com. Lovely. So part of their model is owning things with good SEO that generate loads and loads and loads of page views, right? But it's not just that. They also want to own the advertising operations, as an example, like those that came with IGN Entertainment and Gamer Network. Ziff Davis, we can all agree, is nothing like the Humble that most of us watched rise through the 2010s. So here's how that happened. Humble Indie Bundle 1 was a humongous viral word-of-mouth success, so much so the two founders raised $4.7 million from Sequoia Capital. In 2013, right, they expand into the Humble store. Then they bring the Humble Choice subscription, but it's 2017 where things really grow. That's when Humble gets into the publishing of games, and as a package you can see how that would look good. You've got distribution, you've got a market, you've got a brand. Okay, start selling products that you've got way more of a cut in. As an example, take CD Projekt Red. Did you know they actually started off as a localization and distribution? So that's just how those things can grow. It makes sense then that just over half a year after the publishing announcement, they sold to IGN. And you could say that at least IGN worked within games. There was, of course, controversy, right? Editorial ethics that led to public policies, but at the very least, IGN do actually know what a video game is, and probably know what publishing a video game entails. But unfortunately for everybody, and this really is just like a game of Katamari, IGN sold to Ziff Davis, and that meant that their new bosses, well, they may not have understood video games. The two Humble founders, Jeff Rosen and John Graham, exited in 2019, and that is something that always raises the eyebrow. I mean, often an acquisition deal stipulates that key leadership stay in place for a period, and even if there's no drama, will somebody put in place to manage a brand care as much as the founder of that brand, who nurtured it from its very essence, from the idea stage on the back of a napkin? Almost always the answer is no. They might have literal skin in the game, but maybe not emotional skin in the game. Now, at the time, our two founders said, look, Humble's stable, it's got loads of opportunities, but they just said that their mindset suited startups instead. So, with that, Humble was about to go into a new era. And that new era isn't going to end well. Humble Games did open strong, they did have hits. A Hat in Time, their first one, actually did real well. Slay the Spire, Unsighted, Unpacking, Temtem, Signalis, Void Bastard, and plenty more. As you can imagine, IGN would get what those games are. Probably even reviewed a bunch of them. Ziff Davis, though, will not know what a Void Bastard is. An ex-employee of Humble Games said this to Aftermath: Ziff Davis does not understand the world of game development, and the principle that when you invest money, a game is not released in 6 months, but takes time to be done. And we're starting to not like this when they understood its inner workings. So, with their stock going down, they simply decided they did not want to be in the business anymore. Yeah, so for a group like Ziff, right, publishing is kind of like tweaking the parameters of the money-making machine. They'll think about things like optimizing SEO, or maybe having a manual sales operation to sell, a whole site takeover, a massive banner ad on IGN for the hottest new game. That's the kind of thing they understand. They've got a fairly tight loop between make a change to how the money machine works, see how money comes out of that machine. The problem is that games are creative. A project initially budgeted for 18 months could be a 5 out of 10 if it's released in 18 months. But if the people involved have vision and a little bit more cash, maybe 6 months could turn that game into a 9 out of 10, one that will do fundamentally better. That's the tricky thing about games publishing. You can have all the ideas and plans in the world, but there fundamentally will be unknown unknowns. And that's fundamentally the rub. Ziff Davis acquired an asset that they wanted, but that asset had baggage. that they didn't. What happened next then? Well, the developers of Bo lost access to major parts of their pipeline. They were able to do updates in Steam because if you're a developer, Steam is awesome. You can fire updates to that sucker at all hours. Consoles, though, that is different. QA needed for consoles, also different. The team completely lost access to all of that. Ziff Davis's statement saying operations will continue as normal absolutely did not ring true. Now, the team even tried a Patreon, but that barely moved the needle. Thankfully, over a month later, they finally re-established their console pipeline. So what happened? What changed? Well, there's every chance that the Powell Group handled all of this. They are actually game industry-specific consultants. They were hired because they know what Ziff don't. That means that them hooking up the Bo devs probably does make sense. But it also makes the next thing even more hilarious. They've got around this problem by hiring back the Humble Games team. Yes, Ziff got rid of the games team, got a game industry consultant to manage the fallout of that, and the consultants basically just said, yeah, we kind of need those guys back. But of course with the added twist that the consultants do work for the company that hired them. These people are not going to be back as employees. I mean, come on, why would you pay medical insurance for people when most diseases would only prove fatal after you've wound down the operations? Gallows humor aside, Ziff Davis decided to partner with the Good Games Group, and the press release? Well, the press release is sheer comedy. I'll read it for you. Humble Games is partnering with the newly formed Good Games Group, a new indie game publishing company headed by former Humble Games leaders Alan Patmore and Mark Nash, to further support previously released titles. The partnership aims to work with developers to continue reaching and delighting gamers worldwide. Isn't that great to know, guys? Ziff Davis still wants to reach me and delight me. That just makes me sleep easier at night. Good Games Group's mission is to bring exceptional indie games to the global game community, said Alan Patmore, Chief Executive Officer of Good Games Group. Partnering with Ziff Davis allows us to continue working with the amazing indie developers we collaborated with at Humble Games while allowing us to chart a new course for the future. And that must have been a funny thing for that man to say. He ran the Humble Games division for ages. He got laid off. All of his team got laid off. And the only way he can get back and actually support the people who he made deals with is by having to write that press release, which sucks, which stings. Now, they do seem to be a serious bunch. I mean, when you go to their website, it encourages developers to get in touch for like 2025 and beyond games. So as much as it is a deal with the devil, you can see the logic. Ziff are right now holding a bag full of contractual obligations that they do not want. They don't need a full publisher, they don't want a full publisher because they don't want to publish games. On the other hand, the ex-Humble people obviously want to publish games, they care about that. So the value of this contract with Ziff Davis is probably enough to let them get the ball rolling, but very much get it rolling. It's not there yet. The good news is developers are taken care of, but the same cannot be said for the staff. Good Games Group is 2 to 10 staff per LinkedIn, and if you just search for individual people, there's only 4, right? So they are small. Remember, 36 people were laid off. So we very much need to hope that Good Games Group are able to raise more investment based on their track record with Humble Games, and that if they do that, they can at least take care of who they can. A big thank you to Fume for sponsoring today's work. You can check them out down below, and if you like this story, check out the Annapurna one. It's even more crazy than this, and it literally has a billionaire private island. Yeah, I mean, come on, you gotta see over there.